A sandstone villa stands on the edge of Surrey woodland, its arched windows set deep into pale stone walls, its terrace laid in patterned slabs of colored stone. The house, known as Hurtwood Edge, was built around 1910, long before Eric Clapton made it his refuge. It carries a kind of stately English quiet, but when Pattie Boyd first arrived here in the mid-1970s, she remembered the place as being in a terrible state. Its black and white marble hall scuffed, the 6 bedrooms faded, and the square tower looming like a relic of another century. This was no sleek, curated mansion. It was a canvas of wear and memory. And yet, to a guitarist who had been born in his grandparents' modest house in Ripley, Surrey, a boy who once believed his mother was his sister, the villa's scale and history must have felt like stepping into another world. It became the setting for some of Clapton's most legendary parties. In May 1979, when he finally celebrated his wedding to Pattie, the lawns filled with 3 vast marquees. One for children, one for food and dancing, and one with a stage built right in the garden. Around 300 guests came, from George Harrison and Ringo Starr to Mick Jagger, Jeff Beck, and Jack Bruce. Jam sessions broke out in the open air, a collision of rock's greatest voices echoing across the Surrey hills. The house, once damp and tired, became a stage in itself. But outside the marquee glow, another scene was unfolding. Boyd later recalled an incident where a security man jumped from the shadows with a sawed-off shotgun, a sign of the paranoia that even at celebration, danger seemed close. Hurtwood Edge was Clapton's fortress, but it was never his only retreat. In Antigua, he built Standfast Point, a 45-acre estate that cost about $14 million, later advertised for lease at $50,000 a week. On paper, a paradise. In practice, a rehab-tinted sanctuary. Because nearby, he founded the Crossroads Center in 1997, a clinic for addiction treatment born from his own long struggle with drugs and alcohol. Here the contrast is almost too sharp. A boy who once scraped by on a German-made Hoyer guitar, given to him for his 13th birthday and almost unplayable, now living between villas and oceanfront compounds, building centers that cost more than entire towns. He was no stranger to architectural experimentation either. On the other side of the Atlantic, he owned a 2,920-square-foot home on Venice Beach, Los Angeles. Designed in 1986 by Japanese modernist Arata Isozaki, it was glass and steel with a 600-square-foot patio that framed the ocean. It sold years later for over $5 million. Even here, there's irony. Born in an English village, raised in secrecy about his parentage, Clapton had grown up with no sense of ownership. Now he walked the halls of homes crafted by international architects. The scale of that leap is almost surreal. The same duality plays out in his garage. Clapton once called Ferrari the #1 car, and his collection backed that claim. In 2012, Ferrari honored him with a one-off commission, the SP12EC, a custom-built machine fusing the design cues of a 512BB with modern Ferrari technology. It was unveiled at Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2013, a one-car Hall of Fame for a man already inducted 3 times into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That car alone is a kind of sculpture, rumored to have cost millions. But Clapton's garage wasn't just about bespoke art pieces. George Harrison once gave him a Mini Cooper Radford, a quirky, compact contrast to the roaring 12 cylinders he usually drove. It was a gift from a friend who knew him as a peer, not as an icon. And yet, even in generosity, speed came with scars. His Ferrari 365 GT4 Berlinetta Boxer, a 186-mile-per-hour V12 monster, ended up crumpled after he crashed into a van at 90 miles an hour. The accident left him injured with a perforated eardrum, and the car's image was later immortalized on the cover of his 1977 album, Slowhand. A machine built for glory turned into both a symbol of success and a record of recklessness. The irony deepens. At 13, Clapton had fought for weeks just to get a clean note out of his cheap Hoyer acoustic. He had no car, no stage, just a room in Surrey where practice was survival. Decades later, one story told that he forgot he'd ordered a Ferrari, duplicates arriving a week apart. From deprivation to duplication, the scale feels absurd. But for every win, a wound lingered. The more horsepower in the garage, the more headlines about speeding tickets. Tabloid reports claimed that while driving his Enzo Ferrari, the first delivered in Britain, he was once caught at extreme speed on a public road. He lost his license after being reported at 134 miles per hour in a Porsche 911 Turbo on a French highway in 2004. To some, a legend with toys, to others, reckless indulgence. Yet no possession, no car, no villa eclipses the spectacle of music itself. In 1992, Clapton walked onto a stage carrying a Martin acoustic guitar and sang "Tears in Heaven," a song written for his son Conor, who had died the year before after falling from the 53rd floor of a New York apartment. The performance, stripped of amplifiers and distortion, was almost unbearably intimate. Millions watched as one of rock's most celebrated guitarists turned grief into melody. It remains one of the defining live performances of the late 20th century. The awe wasn't just in the notes, but in the silence they left behind. And yet that same man once cut his teeth in cramped London clubs in 1963 with the Yardbirds, a boy standing in smoky rooms playing for spare change. From backroom gigs to global television, the leap was cosmic. The applause was deafening, but so too were the echoes of controversy. In August 1976, at a Birmingham concert, Clapton stopped mid-set and told the crowd to keep Britain white, endorsing the anti-immigrant views of politician Enoch Powell. He was drunk, angry, but also famous, and the backlash has followed him ever since. Later apologies blamed the bottle, but in 2004 he complicated matters by calling Powell outrageously brave. Fans who once scrawled "Clapton is God" across London walls in the late 1960s now watched a hero tear holes in his own myth. And worse confessions came in 1999 when he acknowledged abusive behavior toward Pattie Boyd during their marriage, which he attributed to alcoholism. It's the kind of statement that scars any legacy, no matter how many Grammys or halls of fame. This is the rhythm of Clapton's life: mansion, Ferrari, ovation, then wound, scandal, consequence. He lived inside contradictions so stark they almost define him more than his music. And just as the applause fades after a concert, the question lingers: what do all the villas, all the cars, all the deals really add up to? The fortune kept climbing. By the late 2000s, Clapton's assets stretched across continents, from the refitted yacht Va Bene, a 156-foot vessel bought in 2005 for around £9,000 million, to the rental income of his Antigua estate, advertised at $50,000 a week when he wasn't living there. Surrey Life's 2009 estimate put his net worth at £120 million, much of it tied up in Marshbrook Ltd, the holding company that had earned him roughly £110 million since 1989. This wasn't just rock star wealth, it was the kind of infrastructure that placed him among the richest residents of Surrey. The scale of his spending could be whimsical. In 2003, Courtings, a Piccadilly gentleman's outfitter beloved by aristocrats and hunters, faced closure. Clapton, a loyal customer, heard the news and within 5 minutes decided to buy half the business. A quick decision for him, a lifeline for a heritage brand. It is almost absurd to picture the boy who once labored on a stiff Hoyer acoustic because he couldn't afford better, now propping up a London tailoring house out of sentiment. Wealth not just for pleasure, but to preserve his idea of tradition. The money also bought movement. Cars cycled through his garage like guitars through his hands. A 2003 Ferrari 360 Modena in Rosso, one of only 352 right-hand drive manuals ever made, clocked just 20,000 miles before becoming part of his collection. At the other end of the spectrum, a 1938 Cadillac Fleetwood, right-hand drive and bought for £750, sat as a reminder of his fascination with American classics. There was even a restored 1949 Chevrolet pickup and a 1932 Ford Hot Rod fitted with a modern V8. These were not just purchases, they were time capsules. But where others see a curated museum, critics saw indulgence. A man once raised in quiet Ripley streets now consuming horsepower like it was oxygen. The indulgence often met a public price. His Enzo Ferrari, the first in Britain, drew headlines not for its rarity but for his reported joyride at extreme speed on a public road. In France, 2004, his Porsche 911 Turbo was clocked at 134 miles an hour and his license was suspended. By 2022, he faced charges for failing to provide identification after being stopped in another Porsche. Charges later withdrawn. What had once been the boy without a car became the man repeatedly punished for misusing them. Luxury inverted into liability. But wealth wasn't always about risk. Clapton learned to convert his possessions into philanthropy. The 2011 auction at Bonham's, which sold off 75 guitars, 55 amplifiers, and even his suits, brought in over £1.3 million for the Crossroads Center. Among the lots was a Fender Telecaster once played on his Hurtwood patio in 1975, captured in a Christie's photograph by Boyd, a tiny pig-nose amp at his feet. The instruments that had once electrified stadiums were repurposed to fund recovery for strangers. Here, excess was turned back into hope. Still, the philanthropy couldn't erase the contradictions. In 1976, the same man who raised millions for rehabilitation had also shouted racist slogans from the stage in Birmingham. In 1999, he acknowledged abusive behavior toward Pattie Boyd during their marriage, which he attributed to alcoholism. It is a brutal tension. The creator of Crossroads Center, spending millions to treat addicts, was also the addict who left scars on the people closest to him. Craft and cruelty sharing the same pair of hands. The awe of his artistry often carried these wounds in its shadow. His guitar tone, the so-called woman tone of cream produced with a 1964 Gibson SG known as The Fool, influenced generations of players. The Stratocaster, nicknamed Brownie, bought during a 1967 stop in Nashville, became the backbone of Layla and other assorted love songs. And yet, Layla itself was written for Pattie Boyd, then still married to George Harrison, a declaration of desire that tore through friendships. The music was immortal, the human cost was messy, and the deepest cost was personal. Conor, born in 1986 to Lori Del Santo, died in 1991 after falling from the 53rd floor of a New York apartment. Clapton was meant to pick him up that day. Out of that grief came Tears in Heaven, performed in 1992 with aching simplicity, an acoustic guitar carrying the weight of unspeakable loss. It became one of his most beloved songs, yet Clapton himself has said he could no longer bear to perform it live. A hit that never stopped hurting. The same pattern plays across his family life. His daughter Ruth, born in 1985 from an affair with Yvonne Kelly, was kept secret until 1991. His marriage to Boyd ended in divorce after years of infidelity and abuse. With Melia McEnery, whom he married in 2002, he built a family with 3 daughters. From secrecy and betrayal to a late-life attempt at stability, his relationships mirrored the oscillation of his career. Brilliance followed by collapse, then quiet recovery. And still, the reverence lingers. He became the only artist ever inducted 3 times into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Once with the Yardbirds, once with Cream, and once as a solo artist. Rolling Stone ranked him the 2nd greatest guitarist of all time. He has collected 18 Grammys and a Brit Award for outstanding contribution. These are not just trophies, they are evidence of craft that changed how the guitar is played. But to speak of Clapton purely in reverence is to miss half the story. Every accolade sits beside a controversy. Every mansion is shadowed by grief. Every Ferrari comes with a ticket, every hit with a wound. Picture it, the 1979 Hurtwood party, marquees lit, George Harrison trading riffs with Paul McCartney and Jeff Beck under the Surrey stars. Now rewind to Ripley in 1945, a boy born into confusion about who his parents even were. The contrast is almost unbearable. One life contains both, and that is what makes Clapton's empire so cinematic and so uneasy. His story is not simply one of wealth and music, but of contradictions that refuse resolution. A marble-floored estate bought by a man raised in secrecy. A Ferrari gifted by a Beatle and another wrecked at 90 miles an hour. A song that healed millions, born of a death that never healed him. And in the end, perhaps that's what his lifestyle tells us. That mastery and excess, philanthropy and prejudice, applause and regret can all coexist inside one person. It is not a neat legacy, but it is undeniably human. Eric Clapton's world is a catalog of wins and wounds, A fortune of villas, yachts, and cars balanced against scandals, addictions, and losses. What remains is a life that forces us to see both at once, the awe of his artistry and the cost of his contradictions. And it leaves the question echoing louder than any guitar riff. When the music fades, what truly lasts?